Hello, my name is Teresa, and I'm a compulsive eater. Welcome to the OA Literature Workshop. Please help me open the meeting with the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Today we're going to be looking at two of our wonderful pamphlets, A Commitment to Abstinence and Maintaining a Healthy Body Weight. OA has lots of literature written by compulsive eaters for compulsive eaters. We have 9 different books in Overeaters Anonymous, including the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions of Overeaters Anonymous, New Beginnings, which is about recovery from relapse, Seeking the Spiritual Path, The Lifeline Sampler. We have 2 meditation books, For Today and Voices of Recovery, which focuses on readings from other OA literature. We have the Overeaters Anonymous 2nd edition. We have the book Abstinence, and we have Beyond Our Wildest Dreams. We have more than 40 pamphlets. We have 5 manuals or handbooks, including the OA Handbook for Members, Groups, and Service Bodies. We have a 12-Step Within manual, a Public Information Pack manual. We have a Professional Outreach manual, and we have a 12-Step Workbook. We have 7 kits or packets of literature, including a newcomer kit, Welcome Back, Sponsorship, Anorexic and Bulimic, for professionals, a new group starter kit, and a newcomer meeting leaders kit. We have 7 wallet cards, including Think First, Just for Today, One Day at a Time, and a pocket reference for OA members, which is like a meeting in your pocket. And we have Spanish literature. We have 20 pamphlets. We have collections of these pamphlets, and then we have 3 OA books. And we also have literature not just in print format, but we have it in downloadable interactive PDFs, and we have ebooks available for use on the more common e-readers. So we have Meeting always readily available. I know that I have all of the OA books on my smartphone, and so I can take that with me everywhere I go. I'm going to start by taking a few minutes to tell a little bit about my story. My name is Teresa, and I'm a compulsive eater. And the first thing I'd like to do is state my commitment to abstinence. I do that every time I begin my sharing in an OA meeting, and I do that every day when I call my sponsor. I need to always remember who I am and what is the most important thing in my life. And for me, that is abstinence and recovery from compulsive eating. I am definitely a compulsive eater, and I use that term because I have a history of both undereating and overeating. My adult weight has ranged between 111 and 3/4 pounds, which was too thin for me, and 189 pounds, which was obese. And it's been up and down along the way. I remember as a child, my compulsive eating took the form of really liking certain foods and also hoarding food. I kept a little stash of candy that I kept very closely inventoried and would have in case I needed it. I didn't really have problems with my weight until junior high school. And when I was in 9th grade, we moved to a new town, and I found it a very difficult transition, and I started to eat compulsively. And I continued to do that throughout high school. I remember many times going out with friends after football games on Friday nights and eating too much of particular types of fast food and swearing off forever and then going back the next week and doing it all over again. So that by the time I graduated from high school, I weighed 155 pounds, and I was about 5'4", 5'5" tall. I continued to eat compulsively and gradually gained more weight until I was at a weight of 188 pounds when I was 24. And at that point, I decided to join a commercial weight loss program. And I joined weighing 188 pounds. I followed the program and the food plan faithfully. I didn't eat less than they told me I could eat, but I ate the minimum amount, and it was very successful. And I reached my goal weight at 125 pounds, and I kept losing. And part of it was intentional because I thought it wouldn't hurt to lose a little bit more weight. And part of it was because I just didn't understand how to add food back in to maintain weight. I kept trying to add it back in things like more broccoli and more apples, and I just couldn't eat enough calories to sustain my weight that way, so I kept losing. And it got to the point that I weighed in at 111 3/4 pounds. And I remember going to the store, trying on clothing, and putting on a pair of girl size 13 jeans, even though I was 25 years old, and looking at myself in the mirror and thinking, yep, those fit, but not feeling any particular joy or pleasure from that, which kind of amazed and disappointed me because I really thought that when I got thin, I was going to be happy and that all my problems were going to be over. Well, I just couldn't maintain that rigorous and restrictive a plan of eating, and I started to gradually slip. And I recorded what I ate each day, and then some days I would just write down bad food day or bad binge day and put a question mark because I didn't even remember what I ate that day. And the result was that I started to gain weight. And I got really scared the way I was starting to binge. And so that was when I went to OA for the first time. And I remember I weighed probably all of 118 pounds at the time. So I didn't go to OA because I was overweight, but because I was scared that I was going to gain all my weight back. And all I did to work the program was basically attend meetings 6 days a week. We had meetings every day but Sunday, so I went to 6 meetings a week. And the only time I was abstinent was the hour that I actually sat in the meeting room. I was usually binging on my way to the meeting, and as I pulled in the parking lot, I would take the sack of whatever it was I was eating and shove it underneath the seat until after the meeting. And then after the meeting, I would watch to see if anyone was coming out of the door who might see me, and I'd grab that sack out from underneath the seat, and I'd start in all over again. I very rarely made it home without eating compulsively along the way. I bought some literature, and I read some of it while I ate and cried, and that wasn't terribly effective. I never got a sponsor. I never worked steps. I never used any of the tools except reading a little literature and going to meetings. I certainly never made a phone call. That meeting had my home meeting had a breakout group where they would go off into a separate room and do kind of an intensive study on one of the steps, and I certainly never went into that room to see what they were doing. And needless to say, that way of not working the program didn't work very well for me. And I continued to eat compulsively. I never did find any recovery that first time around in OA. I did not continue going to OA meetings. I did continue going to the commercial weight loss program. Wasn't terribly successful, but I did manage to lose a little bit of weight from my high weight. But in May of 1989, I had been losing weight on the commercial weight loss program, and then people started commenting on my weight loss, and I got really angry and really scared, and I started eating again. So I went back to OA in May of 1989. I faithfully went to the 3 meetings a week that we had. I started to do some service at the group level. I bought the literature, and I read it, and I made some phone calls, and I tried to work the steps to the best of my ability. I thought that I had worked steps 1, 2, and 3, and I had actually started working step 4. And I wasn't abstinent when I was working step 4. I remember sitting in a room at a retreat center with a pot of hot water and some instant coffee and tea in a cookie jar, and I'd write a little bit, and I'd eat a little bit, and I'd write a little bit, and I'd eat a little more, and not really the recommended way to do a 4th step, but I was trying. And I continued on that way until one day I had been eating at work, going back and forth to the candy jar, and I went downtown to grab some lunch, and on my when I was waiting at the bus stop to go back to my office, I saw someone I knew from OA, and I asked her how she was doing, and she said, terrible. I'm going to quit my job, I'm dropping out of school, and I'm trying to see if my insurance program would pay for inpatient treatment. And I thought, wow, that sounds really serious. And I thought, I don't feel like I'm that bad. I'm nowhere near as bad physically, emotionally, or spiritually as I have been in the past. But I could really see how much she was suffering, and I thought that I could potentially be there too. And I thought, if I needed to go to treatment, I don't have any way to pay for it because I don't have insurance at my job and I don't have any money. But it occurred to me that I wasn't that bad at that point, and that if I worked OA's 12 steps, that I believed that it could work for me, because I knew people who said that they had done the things that I had done, and they worked OA's 12 steps, and they were now abstinent and sane and in recovery. And that was the beginning of my first day of abstinence. I went back to my office, and I stayed abstinent for the rest of the day, even though I had been eating compulsively in the morning. And I went to a meeting that night, and I committed to being abstinent, and I woke up the next morning, and I was abstinent, and I stayed abstinent the rest of the day. And I've been doing that for 8,400-some days since then, one day at a time. And the way that I've been able to do that is continue to work the 12-step program of recovery. If I did not replace the food with something else, I would go back to eating compulsively, because that is how I dealt with everything in my life. If I am not going to use food to deal with my emotions and the happenings of the day and to get through the difficult times of my life, then I have to have an alternative. And for me, that is working the 12-step program. That has given me a relationship with a higher power. It has given me a life beyond my wildest dreams. It has enabled me to stay abstinent since 1990 and to maintain a healthy body weight. I maintain my weight within about a 5-pound range. If it goes outside of that range, and I don't think it's ever really gone above that range, but it's gone below, then I make adjustments to my plan of eating accordingly to try to stay within that 5-pound range. So at this point, I want to go ahead and close my sharing and want to talk a little bit about the literature for today. So the first pamphlet that we're going to talk about is A Commitment to Abstinence. And this is a wonderful pamphlet. And so I just want to go through that real quickly here. So it talks about, first, what is the definition of abstinence? And abstinence, according to OA, is the action of refraining from compulsive eating and compulsive food behaviors while working towards or maintaining a healthy body weight. Spiritual, emotional, and physical recovery is the result of living the Overeaters Anonymous 12-step program. And what is a commitment? That's the trick, is to continue to do something on a regular, ongoing basis. Many of us in OA, for myself included, we have a history of dieting. And what I did when I dieted was I changed the way I eat until I reached some goal or until I gave up. And then I went back to eating the way I ate before, with the result that I went back to looking the way I did before. I went back to eating compulsively. So committing to something means to pledge oneself to a particular course and to continue to do that on an ongoing basis in good times and bad. And we do that one day at a time, which is essential. If I had to commit to staying abstinent for the rest of my life, I'm quite sure I wouldn't be where I am today. But by being able to commit to something for just a single day, that seems doable. We all determine our own definition of abstinence. We define what it is that we need to abstain from. I generally call my sponsor every day, and I commit my abstinence to her. I tell her what I ate the day before and what I plan to eat today. I tell her what I did the day before and what I plan to do today, and I talk about how yesterday went, how I felt, any difficulty that I had with resentments or fears or bad behavior, and then what my plan is to try to do better today. The pamphlet talks about cultivating acceptance of the fact that our choices between eating compulsively or not eating that first compulsive bite. It talks about cultivating gratitude for discovering that we're compulsive eaters and that we've found OA and a solution. I believe that compulsive eating is a deadly disease, and I'm really fortunate that my disease can be arrested by working 12 steps. If I had cancer, that wouldn't necessarily be the case, but because I'm a compulsive eater, the 12-step program can keep me abstinent and can give me a way to deal with life so that I don't ever have to return to eating compulsively. The pamphlet talks about avoiding dwelling on the good things about certain foods that I used to eat and avoid talking about them and dwelling on them and instead focusing on what I have today. When I thought about getting abstinent before I did, I thought it sounded terrible. I thought it sounded like I would be giving up everything that I loved and everything that made life worth living. And that was really such a narrow way of thinking about things. The reality is that the way I ate was not fun. It was not pleasant. It was miserable. It made me sick, it made me fat, and it made me hate myself. So when I think about what I'm giving up when I abstain from eating compulsively, I try to focus on that I'm giving up being fat and sick and hating myself rather than giving up a particular food that I used to enjoy. The reality is that there is nothing in my life that eating compulsively can make better, and the reality is that it actually makes it more difficult to deal with the things that are happening in my life. Each time I face a situation without eating compulsively, it makes it easier to abstain the next time. And having been abstinent for 23 years, a lot of things have happened over that time. I've been fired from a job. I've lost a job because we lost our funding and they had no way to pay me. I met my husband. We dated and got married. He's had health problems. A couple of years ago, he collapsed and was on the verge of death. And I was sitting in the waiting room of the emergency room waiting to see if he was going to make it, and did not eat compulsively. A lot of things will happen over the course of a lifetime that could drive me back to food if I don't have a suitable replacement, which is a relationship with a higher power that I've gotten from working the steps of OA. The pamphlet talks about cultivating enjoyment of abstinence, looking at the things that we have gained or gotten away from by being abstinent rather than anything we may have lost. And it gives a lot of really helpful guidelines about things that can be helpful. One is to develop a plan of eating. And a plan of eating probably varies with each individual person that you talk to. I have a plan of eating that I've been following for years that seems to work well. I abstain from the trigger foods that cause me problems. I eat 3 meals a day and a planned snack. I plan my meals generally in advance. I commit to eating the same quantities of the same types of food at each meal. I weigh and measure much, but not all of my food. And that is a balance that seems to work for me. It definitely helps to plan my meals in advance. I know that for myself, I always know what I will have for breakfast, and I know what I will have for lunch because during the week I take my breakfast and lunch to work with me. The only thing I don't know for sure when I call my sponsor in the morning, I don't always know what I'm going to have for dinner, but I commit that it's going to be the appropriate amounts of the appropriate foods to match my plan. Using the tools, having a sponsor, having an action plan, reading literature, going to meetings, practicing anonymity, doing service, reaching out to help others. Those are all great ways to keep me focused on recovery instead of on anything I quote, might be missing. It's important to enjoy my meals. If what I eat is unpleasant to me, I'm probably not going to stick with it long. I don't eat everything that I like, but I like everything that I eat, and that's important. I have a particular amount that I eat of particular foods. I have had a history in the past of weighing myself too much, and so I have a weighing plan where I weigh twice a month, and that works for me. And I call my sponsor and tell her what the result was, and I don't weigh in between those times. So doing these things one day at a time is something that's very doable. So that's kind of the high points of a commitment to abstinence. So now I want to talk just a little bit about maintaining a healthy body weight. And that is part of our current definition of abstinence. And it says that we are either working towards or maintaining a healthy weight. And again, this is the pamphlet, when you open it up, says maintaining a healthy weight, and then it says a lifetime commitment one day at a time. And so when I had a chance to pick what pamphlets I wanted to talk about, I thought these two fit really well together. And, you know, this is a great pamphlet. I hadn't read it in quite some time, and each time I read the OA literature, I'm struck once again by how much wonderful literature we have and how much great stuff is in there. Each time I read it, it's like I'm rediscovering all this wonderful wisdom that other people have shared in this literature. It's not enough to focus on a plan of eating. If all I have is physical recovery, I will be as crazy as I was before, because I've had physical recovery in the past without developing a way to deal with life, and I was thin and I was crazy instead of being fat and crazy. If I'm going to maintain some kind of balance, and balance is something that I have to find in a way, because with food, I can't not eat at all. I have to eat. I don't have to eat the foods that are trigger foods that will cause me to eat compulsively, but I have to eat something. And I also have a history of eating regular, normal, healthy food in excess. I once broke a period of 2 weeks of abstinence by eating too much vegetable soup. Vegetable soup would be fine, but 1 cup of it at the beginning of my meal might have been okay, but 5 cups is what started me on a binge. So I've binged on all kinds of things in the past, and I could do it again. I need to have that emotional and spiritual recovery that comes with working the steps and having a higher power, and that will help keep me on the path of physical recovery. For myself, I think I also need to have an honest plan of eating that contains the appropriate amount of healthy foods. Because even if I'm abstaining from eating my binge foods, if I'm still eating too much other food, I will not be able to maintain the physical recovery that I want. And I came to OA because I did not want to be fat. I didn't come because I thought I was crazy, although I had a sneaking suspicion. I came because I didn't want to be fat anymore. And I still have the desire to not be either overweight or underweight. And the only way that I'm able to maintain a healthy weight is through having a plan of eating that eliminates the foods that I cannot eat in moderation, that includes other foods in moderate amounts appropriate for my body, and working the 12 steps so that I don't turn back to the food to deal with things that are bothering me. There are some really great stories in this pamphlet, and there's a lot of really great information. I'd forgotten about the thought that once I reached a normal weight, I wouldn't know how to act, that it would be scary. I always thought that many of the problems in my life were because I was fat, and I fully expected that when I wasn't fat anymore, that those problems would go away. And what I discovered is that the food was a symptom of my illness, and that once that I had achieved a healthy body weight, I still had a lot of recovery left ahead of me if I was going to have the kind of life that I wanted to have. So, again, working on practicing the steps on an ongoing basis is just so critical for me. Acknowledging on a daily basis that I'm a compulsive eater, that I'm powerless over food, that my higher power can restore me to sanity. And on the day that I got abstinent, the higher power that I turned my will and my life over to was the OA program. It wasn't any specific God associated with any specific kind of religion. It was that I turned my will and my life over to abstaining from the food that I knew was a problem for me and committing to working the OA 12 steps. I had been to enough meetings that I had seen people who sounded just like me, who said that they had found recovery by doing that. And I trusted that if I did the same things that they had done, that I would get the same results that they had gotten, and I would be able to find recovery on all three levels, physical, emotional, and spiritual. And that has come true in my life. So if it's really kind of disturbing to think that I could reach a goal weight and still have more recovery ahead of me. But on the other hand, that, I think, is part of what keeps me coming back to this program. I have not had to struggle with food for a very, very long time. My abstinence, my plan of eating are easy for me to follow. But I still have to deal with life on an ongoing basis. And so when I find myself becoming restless, irritable, or discontented, if I'm resentful, if I'm fearful, if I'm just feeling a little itchy, if those thoughts cross my mind that maybe a little something might help, that's when I know that I need to find out and dig a little deeper by working the steps to find out what's bothering me, what my part is, and what I need to do in order to turn that over to my higher power, ask for help, turn my attention toward helping somebody else, and then that desire is relieved. And I know my first sponsor used to say two things that I found very helpful to me. One was, she said, if something was bothering me, I should call somebody and ask how they were doing, rather than telling them how I was doing. And that would take the focus off of me and off of my concerns, and that was always incredibly helpful. The other thing that I think she used to tell me that I found very helpful was she would ask, what would make it necessary for you to eat compulsively today? And when she put it like that, it put a different slant on it that I hadn't really heard before. And I thought, well, what would make it necessary for me to eat compulsively? Well, what I can tell you is that losing my job did not make it necessary to eat compulsively. Dating my husband with all the fear involved with that did not make it necessary to eat compulsively. Dealing with his health problems has not made it necessary to eat compulsively. The fact that we've had a very cold, snowy winter and we're all tired of it has not made it necessary for me to eat compulsively. So whether it's the big events of life or the little minor trivial irritations, none of those things makes it necessary to eat compulsively.